Sometimes you don't realize you've begun a journey. Life is tricky that way. But in retrospect, you can pinpoint a moment when you make a choice, and that choice unwittingly sets you on a path to places where you would have never imagined going. After my parents both passed away, I began piecing together our family's history. I came across the most extraordinary story of my great-grandmother Betty and her husband Moishe Levitt, written in 1967 by her sister Masha. The story was handwritten on a fax sent to my mother, Brenda Levitt, by people I'd never heard of, Glenda and Abel, no last name. But with a quick Google search, I discovered it was from Glenda Levitt, wife of my second cousin Abel Levitt. And thus began my journey with the Levitts of Israel. My mother never revealed that her grandparents were Holocaust victims, but the truth surfaced through the story on the fax. I began corresponding with Glenda and Abel and discovered that in the early 1900s Lithuania, Betty and Moishe were neighbors with Abel's grandparents, Abba and Sheena. But then Glenda described to me how my great-grandparents died. Betty and Moishe Levitt, good, honest people, were murdered, shot to death by the Nazi soldiers and local Lithuanian collaborators. So when I learned that Glenda and Abel had organized a tour of Lithuania to honor Jews murdered in the Holocaust, I knew I had to go. The first memorial I attended was a ceremony in the town of Birzai. It began with the planting of trees by the descendants of local Lithuanian families who helped the Jews escape from the horror of the systematic slaughter of the Birzai Jewish community.
In 1941, when the Germans invaded, some Lithuanians joined the group who helped the Germans. Some stood silently by, and a few extraordinary people recognized the evil around them and at the risk of their lives saved Jews because it was the right thing to do.
Then we walked the same 3-kilometer path where the Jews of Birzai took their last steps, as some of the townfolk silently looked on, while others looted their homes. Many of the homes belonged to generations of Jewish families, like the Levitt relatives depicted in the windows of this painting by Glenda Levitt, paying homage to our family. We arrived at the forest where the Jews were murdered by the Nazis and Lithuanian collaborators. Then their bodies were buried nameless in mass graves. The ceremony included a local choir of Lithuanian high school students singing in Hebrew and speeches by dignitaries. Glenda and Abel Levitt were the driving force behind creating a memorial at the site of these mass graves. They turned their anguish into action, and through sheer force of will, they pushed through every obstacle to erect a beautiful monument in the form of a bridge designed by the famous architect Dr. Joseph Rabbi. And then the descendants of the Jews murdered unveiled a memorial.
An Israeli poet by the name Zelda wrote the following: "Every person has a name given to him by God, given to him by his parents." And this is for me the essence of today's event, bringing back to light the names of who used to be members of the Birzai community, turning the numbers that are behind us to names that are there.
Etched onto the metal are 522 names of the known victims, and 1 Star of David for each of the unknown victims. Small ones for children, larger ones for adults. 2,400 Jews in all were murdered that day, the 8th of August, 1941. The anguish of the Holocaust echoes through time like tears making ripples in the water, spreading outward on a lake in Lithuania onto all the bodies of water around the world. Yet my sorrow was replaced with hope and love because this tragedy connected me to my amazing relatives in Israel. I can't say how this journey will shape my future, but somehow I know it will, as all pivotal moments in life do.